When you build a house, you start with the site, the piece of ground, and every site has a legal description. As legal descriptions, these are defined by surveys which are done by licensed surveyors. Just like a PE is a licensed professional engineer, a PLS is a licensed professional land surveyor. And these surveys are filed as legal documents with the county. There are 3 different forms that a legal description takes, and we'll look at each of these. The lot you might have seen if you looked at a tax lot map from the county tax assessor's office. It looks kind of like this. And a lot is part of a subdivision. So if you're subdividing a piece of land, and you might start with a plat. So a plat is part of a city. This is usually in developed urban areas, by the way. City of Springfield, City of Eugene. So the plat is a section of land in the city. You as a builder might do a subdivision which you will break into blocks divided by streets, and each of those are broken into lots. And the tax assessor will put a tax lot number on those. And notice that, we'll come to this later, but the sizes are given in decimal feet, not feet and inches, and the angles are given in surveyor's units. So let's talk about that. Meets and bounds is what surveyors call these. Old-timey words. Meets is an old-time word that just means measurement, and bounds is an old-time word that means boundaries. What a surveyor means when they say meets and bounds is that the boundary of a site is defined by these measurements. And the surveyor starts at one point. It's labeled point of beginning, so you'll see POB on the map. And that point of beginning is going to be marked by a fixed object in the earth. And you've possibly seen these around. It might be a brass benchmark thing attached to a rock or so, or it might be a steel rod driven into the earth. It's supposed to be a thing that can't move, at least not in human lifetimes. And the surveyor starts at that point of beginning and then goes a certain distance, a certain direction, then turns, another distance direction, another distance direction, another distance direction, and their goal is to come back to the point of beginning. So their survey has to form a closed loop, and if it doesn't, they have to do things until it finally does close, because this has to be very precise. Notice that the lengths, the measurements on a survey plan, are given in decimal feet. So here on this drawing we see 778.8 feet. When we draw buildings, we do feet and inches, but when we draw site plans, we do decimal feet, and those are known as engineering units. And then the angle is given in what are known as surveyor's units. So notice it says down here on this bottom boundary, it says 48 degrees 30 minutes, and it says north 48:30 east. So we'll look at what that is. But first, let's just say a word about these degrees and minutes. The idea is that just like on a clock, when you look at an analog clock or a wristwatch, and you see that the minute hand goes around the dial of the clock and it traces 60 minutes. A surveyor says 1 degree is divided into 60 pieces, and a surveyor calls those 60 minutes. And then they can further subdivide. A minute can be divided into 60 pieces, and they call those 60 seconds. So for example, at the bottom of the slide here, if you wanted to write 1.5 degrees in surveyor's units, you would write 1 degree 30 minutes, because 30 minutes is half a degree, and then 0 seconds. Bearings work like this. You face either north or south, true north or south on the map. And then you turn either east or west. So let's look at this line right here, north 60 degrees east. To locate that line, you are telling them start pointing true north, then rotate to the east 60 degrees. You will come to this line, north 60 degrees east. Let's look at this line down in the bottom. For this one, you're telling them start pointing to the south. From the south, rotate 30 degrees towards the west. And that gives you this line, south 30 degrees west. That bearing tells you what to do in the order that it's written. So for example, north 84 degrees 30 minutes east. Start with the north, go a certain distance to the east. And you get to choose whether you want to start with the north or start with the south. You can describe a line either way. So here's an example. See this line that goes all the way through this circle, all the way through this compass? If you want, you can describe that line's angle by starting at the north, rotating 13 degrees west. That takes you to this line. Or if you prefer, you can start at the south, then rotate 13 degrees toward the east. That takes you to that line. And that is just the same line at the same angle. One says north 13 degrees west. The other one says south 13 degrees east. Same line. Now let's look at the third way of providing a legal description, this rectangular survey. And this, sometimes called the Jeffersonian grid, this was a public land survey that was commissioned by President Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, created in 1785. And we will stay away from the moral implications of fanning out across the continent and appropriating land where people already lived. I'll just say that at this time, Jefferson and others thought that basically the land was empty and they should go survey it. So they did. And the continent is, well, the United States is divided up into these sections called Great Surveys that are defined by horizontal baselines and vertical meridians. And here's a colored map that has them. So in some cases, county lines follow these baselines and meridians, and in some cases, even states run parallel to them. There's a Thomas Wolfe line where he says, "I shall go out west where the states are square." And here you see, like there's the Four Corners area. These are square states, all right. In Oregon, we have a baseline that's up at the north part of the state near the Columbia River. And then our principal meridian is the Willamette Meridian. So all of our rectangular surveys in Oregon start at this point where that baseline and the Willamette Meridian intersect. Now, from those two lines, the land is divided up into 6-mile chunks. Chunks of land that are 6 miles on squares, 6 miles on a side. And those townships are described by, are they to the east or the west of the principal meridian, and are they to the north or the south of the baseline? So here's one, this colored in square is a 6-mile square township. It is range 3 east, so it's the third column to the east of the principal meridian, and township 4 south, so it's 4 rows south of the baseline. Then each of those 6-mile squares is divided into 36 sections, and they are numbered in the order in which those surveyors 200 years ago walked. So they would walk section 1, then they'd go to 2 to 3, they go 6 sections over, then they'd turn and come back 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, then they'd turn and go west again. That's how they are numbered. Each section is 1 mile square. It's a mile high and a mile wide, and that is 640 acres. You can divide a section into a quarter section. So if this is 640 acres, a quarter of that is 168 acres. And you can divide these sections into quarters and quarters. You can do it multiple times. So you may have heard old-time farmers, when I was a kid, farmers would talk about going out to plow the South 40. What that meant was they had this section, they had this quarter section, and down in the south of their quarter section was a quarter. That was 40 acres, and that was the South 40.